Good afternoon, and welcome to the Murphysboro City Board of Education meeting. Tonight, the board will stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance, and while we're standing for a moment of silence, please let us remember the passing of one of our longtime educators, legend, friend to our city school children, to our teachers, and to the community, Mrs. Ruth Bowden. If the board would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. If I could get a motion for the approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
We've had a motion and a second for the approval of the agenda. All in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Good evening, Dr. Gilbert. We'll turn it over to you for communications.
Thank you so much. Good evening. We have a special guest here tonight. The mayor is here, although Mr. Hopper's last official board meeting will be in April. The mayor did want to come tonight to honor him for his service to the children of Murphysboro. Mayor Bragg.
Thank you, Dr. Gilbert. And if Mr. Hopper would join me here at the podium, I have a presentation to make. I know you've been on this board for a great long time, and it is a pleasure to be here tonight to at least recognize you for a lot of service, but we still expect more. So you've got 30 more days, and yeah, I realize you're leaving on a short month. April has 30 days, but 30 more days we've got for you. David, it's a pleasure for me as mayor to recognize outstanding accomplishments by presenting proclamation on behalf of the mayor's office and our council here in Murphysboro. And you are unfortunately not seeking re-election, but there are many people who are seeking election to at least one of your spots, and we're certainly proud of that in our upcoming city election. I'm going to put in a plug for that because early voting starts tomorrow, and we're excited about that, and Election Day is April the 20th, and we've got great candidates running. And you've certainly led the way by offering your service to the city school board for being very strong in many areas and for certainly giving us what we have today with the 11 campuses that we have for our city school K-6 system. I want to therefore mention your over 20 years of service to the school board. During that time as a member of the board, you have demonstrated a regard and a concern for the students of Murphysboro City Schools and devoted much of your time to furthering their interests, the interests of our faculty and our administrators. Now that you are retired from a career that culminated as Senior Vice President and Trust Officer with Pinnacle Bank, you're going to have more opportunities to spend more time to pursue other interests and activities. And I realize golf is somewhere in the top 10 of things that you're going to get to do. And now you'll get to stay later on board meeting nights at the course to play, so that's good. So now, therefore, I, Tommy Bragg, Mayor of the City of Murphysboro, Tennessee, on behalf of the entire City Council and in recognition of your many years of service through the Murphysboro City School Board, do hereby proclaim this day as David W. Hopper Day and urge all of our citizens to join as we wish you well in your future endeavors and thank you for your service. Thank you, David. I know David is shy, but I know he's probably got a few words.
Thank you. I'd just like to thank you for the support that you've given us over the years for the school board. It's been very rewarding and pleasurable to work with the council. They've always been supportive, and you especially have been nice, very, very nice to work with. And sometimes we've had some meetings about financial matters and things that we didn't always agree on, but the council has been very supportive of the school system, and I think has provided us with what we needed to have an outstanding system. In case I don't get to do it later on, Madam Chairman, if I could take a minute and say I would like to thank all of the teachers and administrators and employees of our school system that have made us have such an outstanding system. Over the years, as I have gone to state meetings, Murphysboro has always been respected and well regarded for the caliber of school system we have, and would not be possible without them. Also, I would like to say thank you to the board members for your support in the past, and what a pleasure it's been to work with you and with a whole lot of other board members, some of which aren't still living, but unfortunately, but we have had great people in Murphysboro to volunteer for the school board, and sometimes this hasn't been a very enjoyable job, but once you go out in the schools and you see the teachers working with the children and what's going on, well, then it makes it all well worth it. So I would like to finally say this has been a rewarding endeavor for me. I've enjoyed it. Learned a lot from individuals, learned a lot about education, learned a lot about how boards work and should work, I hope. And I wish this board and this system well, and hope you have the continued success we've had in the past. And thank you for taking time to come out tonight.
Thank you, Angela. Thank you, Ms. Gilbert.
May I make a comment?
Yes. Dr. Andrews?
I'd just like to comment that I'm really, really going to miss Mr. Hopper's help on the board, his friendship. I hope I won't miss, because we're going to stay friends. He has brought a great sense of financial responsibility to the board. He's always kept children first. He came from the volunteer board and was a volunteer probably almost as long as he's been an elected board member. The board, back then and when we first started being elected, really had the spirit of a volunteer board, and I think that that's something that he's tried to continue and has been a really good influence for the city schools. He's seen us grow, he's seen us improve, he's seen us face challenges, and has just had a really strong positive influence on our school system, and we're losing a really good board member. Really appreciate that I've had the opportunity to get to know you and work with you, and we're going to miss you on the board.
Thank you, Dr. Andrews. I wish my mother was still living so she could hear that.
Mean that in all sincerity. We're going to miss you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, yes. And that sense of humor. So.
Thank you so much. Now we have, I should say the mayor's better half, because I know both of them, I guess I can say that. But Jeannie Bragg, if you would please come forward and give us an update on the Foundation's Education Celebration.
Thank you for having me. Mayor Bragg, Dr. Gilbert, Mrs. Wade, and board members. I am here tonight to report on the success of the third annual City Foundation fundraiser, which was held March 3rd at Stones River Country Club. A pre-party was held at our home. This year's event honored Joyce Taylor, community volunteer, who was a member of the City Schools Foundation and has been instrumental in its foundation. 175 people were in attendance. Our chief corporate sponsor was the Daily News Journal. Their coverage before and after the event was wonderful, as I'm sure you all are aware. Corporate sponsors were the following: Mary Beth and Gary Wilson, Mid-State Radiology, Dr. Susan Andrews and Randy Rickert, Dr. Andrews present tonight, Warren Johnson, orthodontist, Old South Properties, City Tile, Judge Donna Scott Davenport, Dempsey, Van Treese and Follis, First Tennessee Bank, Pinnacle Financial Partners, David LaRoche, attorney at law, Middle Tennessee Medical Center, and Venture Express. Most of these groups have been sponsors for all 3 years the fundraiser has been in existence. In addition, we added a new category of sponsorship this year called the valued vendors. Vendors who sell their products and services to the schools were offered a chance to show their appreciation for our business by contributing in a new level of sponsorship. Vendors who participated were Cumberland International Trucks, Holden Hardware, Fox Brothers Electric, Webb Mason Gary Emerson, Regions Bank, Marion and Green Roofing and Sheet Metal Company, Audax Strategies, Stonegate Corporate Center, The Works Group, Screen Printing and Embroidery, Carpets by Osborne, Hoover Paint and Wall Covering, Lightspeed Technologies, and Carey Street, Crosland and Associates. Each year at the event, a particular school is spotlighted, and the Discovery School was our featured school this year. Dr. Linda Clark, her staff, and many of the parents spent a lot of after-school hours helping us make this success, for which we are very grateful. We have not received the final profit of our total yet, but we estimate in this one night we raised $45,000 to $50,000, an amount of which we are very proud. This money will be used during the next school year to award grants to teachers to enhance science and academic instruction. In addition, 25% of the monies raised will be reserved for parities in school, supplementing programs in schools where parent-teacher organizations are unable to raise these funds. I feel very grateful to be a part of the City School Foundation and am very proud of the amount of money we raised this year. I represent all my fellow members by thanking you for letting us be participants in one of the finest school systems in the state of Tennessee. Thank you.
And thank you again, Mayor Bragg and Ms. Bragg, for your hospitality. It was a tremendous evening, and I know how much work you put into that, so thank you so much for your dedication. I also like to recognize Cheryl Harris for her work with that.
Mrs. Phillips has a comment.
I was just going to thank you for your amazing leadership and energy you brought to the event. Thank you so much.
I'd like to just comment, too, there were some really hard workers that, and Mrs. Bragg was certainly one of the leaders of that, and we appreciate you all offering your home for the event, too. But it was a great event. It spotlighted the children, the school, and it took a lot of work to pull off that event. Now, we can't list all the people that worked hard, but there were a lot of them, and I'm grateful. And the teachers will be, too, and the children. Mm-hmm. And they get these funds and have these fun projects that they're going to get to do.
Dr. Gilbert.
Thank you. Although she isn't here tonight, I would like to recognize Danielle Kaminsky. As you know, Danielle tenured her resignation yesterday morning. It was quite a surprise. But her last day of service to Murphysboro City will be the 9th, and we certainly want to recognize her for her dedication to children and for her work with us. I've only worked with her a few months, certainly have enjoyed it, but I do want to recognize her and thank her for her service to Murphysboro City Schools. Behind your agenda in your packet, you do have the Murphysboro City Schools Teachers of the Year, and I would like to read those if I could tonight. We will be honoring those teachers later in the year at a celebration, but I think that their achievements certainly deserve recognition more than one time. So from the Bellwood Bowden Preschool, we have Lana Hurt. Lana also is the System Teacher of the Year for the early grades. From Black Fox Elementary, Christy Robinson and Kim Nelson. From Bradley Elementary, Kathy Urbina and Latoya Seymour. From Cason Lane Academy, Natalie Adcock and Mary Vitantonio. From Discovery School, we have Siobhan Davis-Louis, and we also have David Winton. And if you'll remember, David was the young man who certainly provided music for us with his excellent choir at the night of the celebration. From John Pittard, we have Carla Kelvin and Herman Nelson, and Herman is the System Teacher of the Year for the upper grades. From Mitchell Nelson Primary, Sheila Sharp. From Mitchell Nelson Elementary, Kelly Jones. From Northfield Elementary, Marlena McClanahan and Meredith Gilliland. and from Scales Elementary, Tiffany Strevel and Angela Huff. So we certainly congratulate those teachers, and we appreciate their work. I would remind you that our first budget study session is April the 1st at 6:30. Our second session will be April the 14th at 5:30. We would like to congratulate Scales Elementary 5th grade students who are in second place overall in the MTSU Invention Convention for their invention, the Cap Keeper. And we had Julia Barch and Braden Cloyd and Gina Kleinschmidt and Cameron Maddox and Megan West that made up that team. Congratulations to Irma Siegel's 5th grade student, Shelby Parker, who was a winner in the Captain William Lytle Chapter DAR American History Essay Contest. And congratulations to 6th grade student Alexandra Connell from Mitchell Nelson Elementary, whose entry titled The Transcontinental Railroad from the Perspective of an 11-year-old Pioneer Girl won and will now be entered in state competition. And I must say that that title sounds so much like a dissertation that I'm certain that this student will have her doctorate shortly. That's quite a title. Congratulations to the Bradley Academy Musical Theater Department under the direction of Allison Isom and Catherine Gordon. They have received a $10,000 General Mills Health and Fitness Grant, and the grant will be used to promote positive nutrition choices, snacks, and fitness initiatives. We'd like to thank the Stones River Oaklands Kiwanis Club for the $1,000 donation to Bradley Academy to support the 6th grade Washington, D.C. trip. And the Salvation Army thanks Mitchell Nelson Primary for volunteering and fundraising. They were able to donate $442.62. And as the top Murphysboro City Schools contributor, they will receive the traveling plaque. Mitchell Nelson Elementary and Primary thank Pat Hamlin and Adam Booten for participating in their amazing alumni program. And congratulations to the following students who placed in the Chamber's BEP Arts for Education countywide competition. Mitchell Nelson Primary, you will notice, for the K through 3rd grade painting, looks like they made a clean sweep of it. We have Addison Brewington, who had first place, second place from Daniel Circosta, third place, Natalia Austin, honorable mention, Tanya Arvini. Okay, she told me how to say this before. I can do this. Arevanos. Thank you very much from the back there. The principal is very proud. For the kindergarten through 3rd grade potpourri mixed media, we have honorable mention to Cora Looper from Northfield. 4th and 5th grade painting, first place from Hayden Jones at Northfield. And 4th and 5th grade potpourri mixed media, second place Mia Simone Hewell from Northfield. And 3rd place Cooper Baugh from the Discovery School. Those are your communications.
Thank you, Dr. Gilbert. Can I get a motion for consent items or anything you want to take out to discuss? It's open for a motion.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Dr. Gilbert, action items.
Your first action item is approval of licensed employees that are recommended for tenure. Mr. Wilkerson.
Thank you, Dr. Gilbert. Behind tab 2, you'll see the licensed employees recommended for tenure in the Murphysboro City School System. These are teachers that have completed a minimum of 27 months of service within a 5-year period and have been recommended by their principals to, and also recommended by the director of schools to receive tenure. If you'll indulge me, I'll read their names. Richard Alexander, Latasha Allison, Mary Beth Baker, Jalicia Beverly, Taisha Brooks, Brenda Cardwell, Jenny Copeland, Jennifer DeFeer, Lindsay Denton, Susan Follis, Sadia Gentry, Anastasia Gilliam, Carrie Graham, Tress Holmes, Sarah Irwin, Neely James, Lindsay Johnson, Tim Jones, Teresa Lambert, Teresa McCarthy, Kristen McKnight, Lindsay McNaughton, Greta McCree, Michelle McVicker, Tammy Neely, Craig Offit, Dina O'Neill, Cheryl Taylor, Rachel Pepper, Lauren Powers, Melissa Ray, Margaret Reed, Sarah Ryan, Casey Sims, Ashley Stone, Danya Statz, Tiffany Strevel, Lynn Tate, Marilyn Tenpenny, Carrie Victory, Margaret Parsley, Amy Walker. There were 2 teachers that held tenure prior to leaving the district, and upon return they served a year of probationary status, and they too have been recommended for tenure. Those teachers are Audrey Black and Laura Dunlap.
So we congratulate those teachers, and we certainly are very pleased to have them with Murphysboro City Schools.
Yes, we will. Dr. Andrews had a question before the vote.
I just have a question. How many non-renewals did we have this year?
That information is not in this board packet. Non-renewals of licensed personnel, I think there were 7.
Okay, thank you.
Is there a motion to accept the tenure and approve the tenure of our director?
So moved. Second.
There's been a motion and a second to recommend to be approved for these teachers for tenure. All in favor with a sign of aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Item B under action items is approval of the 2010-2011 calendar. And you have behind tab 2, you have 4 calendars. You have the traditional and also the alternative calendar. You also have a modified calendar B and a modified calendar C. And if I could comment on this, please. In Murphysboro City, as you know, we are very focused on students, and we're very focused on student learning. And one of the things that has become evident is there is concern about the impact of 2 calendars on student learning. I realize that there is also a concern on your part, and I certainly understand that, about family vacations. The vacations that would be impacted would be in the fall and would be in the spring if we go to a unified calendar, particularly if that calendar is a traditional or one of the modified calendars. As if we do have families who have planned vacations in the fall and in the spring, I think it is important that we work with those families. If they have pre-planned a vacation and have evidence of that, we can certainly deal with that on a case-by-case basis, and I would ask the principals to do that, because we do not want them to cancel something that they cannot cancel if they've already planned their vacation with their families. The children should not be penalized if the families still want to take that vacation time that they've scheduled. So I did want to share that with you. Again, the focus being on the students, we are not about to penalize students if their families have planned vacations, because we understand that that time is important. One of the deciding factors in my asking you to go to a unified calendar is what we see with the 3 weeks that are occurring between the time that we begin the alternative calendar and the traditional calendar. And I think that you have on your desks information about that in numbers. When you look at the numbers of students that we have coming into the system, coming into the alternative calendar schools, we're averaging about 156 students a year. And you have there in front of you, you have the various schools in which that occurs. I understand that in education, we spend a lot of time with numbers, but our first goal is to spend a lot of time with children. So while the number 156 may not seem like a lot of children when we're looking at how many we have in our system, each one of those children represent achievement and represent potential. And I think that when we think about what happens during that first 3 weeks of school, when we think about the bonding that goes on with the teacher, when we think about the bonding that goes on among the students, when we realize that procedures are critically important, and during those first few weeks of schools, procedures are practiced, it's difficult for me to justify that we have 2 calendars in the school system if we are really looking at what impacts student learning. Those first 3 weeks of school are critical. And we might be able to say, well, the parents should know when they move here that we have 2 calendars. They should realize where they're zoned. But what we also know is that after looking at what April Hall was able to pull up as far as reasons for the students not being there, that isn't always the case. The parents don't always know. They don't keep up with the school calendar, and perhaps that's the parents' fault, but the result is that the children are out of school. So based on the effect of the children and the numbers that we see there, I am asking you to go to a unified calendar. We talked quite a bit last night at the study session about professional learning communities. We are forming those in Murphysboro City. If you look at the calendar as far as the teachers, we have 3 weeks there where some teachers are already in schools, others aren't. So as far as professional development, that really has no chance of occurring in a substantial manner. There's also a period of time from mid-September until mid-October where we can't have meetings in the afternoon. There's another period from February 28th to March 25th when we can't have meetings in the afternoon. So as far as the impact on professional learning communities and really being able to learn across the system from each other, we do have that. But again, the primary concern for me in making the recommendation is the children that we see. When we look at what we're trying to do with the system, and we're trying to work on truancy, and we're trying to have children stay in school, and we look at what state law says, and we know that for every 5 excused absences, we're going to be faxing a notice to the Murphysboro Police Department. For every 10, they'll actually be filing in juvenile court. But yet here we have 15 days. I could go into reasons as far as records and the difficulties that we have. For example, if we roll the database forward and we have a situation where a student is going from an alternative calendar to a traditional calendar, until he enrolls in that traditional school, basically, he's considered truant for those weeks. But I think that I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. I know Mr. Anderson can certainly address the savings that we would have as far as funding, and I would ask him to do that. But again, the primary reason for asking you to move to a unified calendar is the students that we see that if we don't do that this year, that we're again running a chance of 156 kids that are going to be behind 3 weeks.
On the financial part of this, we had talked last night. If we can go to a unified, the Teacher Association has approached us about the possibility of a 12 pay cycle rather than the 11 and 12, so having 2 different ones to have one. By doing that, we would save the interest on the money that we have to pay out in July, which we don't receive any state money at all in July. We don't receive our first check from the state until on or about August 15th. So we are putting out basically 2 full paychecks, which means we run into our fund balance. We're well over $3 million. We're pushing $4 million by the time that second check goes out. We would be able to save the interest on that money, which amounts to approximately $37,500 over the time that we could actually have that money in our account rather than putting it out. Also, one of the aspects that you had in the materials last night was about transportation. We're running 3 extra weeks of bus drivers for half routes, basically, and we're having to pay then that extra amount. And I got the information from the transportation department, and it's approximately $24,000 extra to run those extra 3 weeks. And that's just the payroll side. We didn't count the fuel side because there's some crossovers there, because if you're running half routes, meaning for the 7 alternative calendar schools, and then we have the other 5 added to it, there is some crossover amounts there. So I couldn't really get a firm number on the fuel expense, but there is a savings financially to this. There's less pressure on our fund balance and cash reserves if we do have our pay cycles changed. So that was one of the aspects that Dr. Gilbert asked me to look into.
Thank you, Dr. Gilbert and Mr. Anderson. Board members, do you have any questions or comments about the calendars?
Question, Doctor. Mr. Anderson, are there not actually 5 weeks? Because then when there's the fall break and the spring break, since that's 2 weeks for some schools and 2 weeks and only 1 week for the others, do we not also have half
Yes, we have the
Routes.
same thing. Actually, it would end up being 6 weeks with the 3 weeks at Christmas time and then fall and spring. We were focusing on the startup time, but you are correct.
So the savings would even be
It
larger.
could actually double that amount. We were just focusing on the beginning starting dates.
Okay.
Dr. Butcher and then Dr. Andrews.
Also for Mr. Anderson, Gary, do we have, are there probably other small savings like this that are just peppered throughout our budget that we might be able to find due to this change? And are there any negative effects if we were to go to one calendar? Would it cost us anything anywhere?
I have been trying to think of all the little things, and there are probably some little, like nickel and dime type things we could save on. One of the factors we don't know is we do keep our buildings at regular temperatures, but when you add extra bodies in the school for certain amounts of time, it does have a little more draw on the air conditioning unit. We would be pushing back if you do decide to go with the enhanced or traditional calendar or modified traditional. It would push it back. So the first 3 weeks of school are probably the hottest 3 weeks that we experience, so that would help. We didn't find any negatives on the financial side of this by making this change. We see it all as positives and being able to really better streamline our operations and not having to produce 2 distinctly different payrolls with distinctly different data, which means we have to deal with issues on that. And if we have teachers that are at the alternative calendar schools now and the enrollment doesn't hit just right, they get transferred to a traditional school, then we do have to pay them extra money, which we would, of course. We wouldn't expect them not to, but then it changes their pay cycle. And if we're on one unified 12-month, that wouldn't be an issue.
Dr. Andrews.
I just would like to comment that this has been a really difficult issue for me to think about and decide, because I got a lot of emails, and we all did, a lot of comments on different calendars, and basically parents and teachers, for the most part, are very happy with things are now, the way they are now. That's what I heard from a lot of people. There were some people who had very good reasons to change things, but there were a lot of people who were passionate about their alternative calendar. And I understand that, and I would have loved to have had my family on the alternative calendar. I think it would have been great. And, I respect that we asked them to give us information, and they did. I think that Dr. Gilbert is right. When you come down to it, you have to decide what's going to be best for the children. But it really bothers me to make a decision that's going to be hard on some people. It does. And we had a situation that nobody really was saying much about, that there was a problem, but Dr. Gilbert identified it, and I think there are teachers and principals who would speak up and say, yeah, she's right. And we do have these children who are getting in school late, and it's hard to bring them up to speed, and they don't know how the classes work. They've missed out on some of the educational aspects of school. We also have to worry a lot about money, but it's really it's hard. It's just hard for me to not be able to tell all those parents of the alternative calendar that have really enjoyed it, that let's keep doing it, because I think it's been great for them, and that bothers me that we've got that dissonance there, and we can't keep everybody happy. I will also comment that I didn't see all the individual emails from what came into the web, and there were a lot of people who did vote for the modified calendars on the web, and those are more the traditional calendar, and there were probably more that voted for that than voted for the alternative calendar. So it's not that the parents and teachers didn't vote, it's just that I heard a lot of passionate people saying that they wanted the alternative calendar, and I wanted to keep it for them, but I think that I've been convinced by Dr. Gilbert and some other people that we've got to do what's best for the kids, and I'm not real happy about having to make that decision. guess I would say.
Any more comments? Ms. Copper?
Has the reason for the recommendation been fully communicated to all the people that were writing us emails saying they wanted to stay on the same arrangement they've had?
As far as the emails, the ones that came through that were forwarded to me or that were sent to me, I've read all of them. But as far as communicating back, I communicated with those people who communicate with me. But really, and I know this is going to sound a little strange, but I've tried to stay out of the process and really let the people speak what they wanted.
Well, I was just thinking if the people who all the people that wrote us, if they heard the reasons,
Right.
the explanation for that they may change their opinion. And I personally think the more communication there is with parents and tell them the reasons and the benefits and the detriments and the benefits and everything else, that the better off you would be as far as before you make a change like this. And what I've seen appears logical, and in making the change, I just don't think I question whether we've gotten that information out to the people that are going to be affected by this, and that's the reservation I have with doing something at this time.
Ms. Duggan?
On the website, didn't the website contain what we were given earlier at our retreat, some of the reasons?
It contained the differences on the website. Linda, did we put? I'm not sure that we put the pros and cons, because when you look at the pros and cons, there were so many. It was so predominantly against keeping the alternative that, again, my feeling was that it was important for you all to hear what the parents were wanting, so that I did not want it to appear that a decision had already been made one way or the other. And I knew that if we put the pros and cons there, that would appear that we were trying to do that.
Well, I've been somewhat surprised at the number of parents and teachers in our alternative schools that have voiced their concern about going to one calendar and going to Modified C. I was not expecting to hear that. I did have people who voiced a very strong concern about keeping the alternative calendar. I have attempted, and I think I have with one email bounced back to me, but I have responded to every person that sent an email to me, letting them know I appreciate their input, and I have, because I came into the work session last night thinking I had made up my mind on how I was going to vote. But then after looking more closely at what you've shared about the number of kids who are missing days, and when we look at our schools that are struggling the most with achievement, and if we look within our own school system, I think we would be hard put to say that one calendar is stronger than the other as far as student achievement. And we all know that years ago when we first had our first year-round calendar, it was a true year-round because it was 9 weeks on and 3 weeks off. And within that 3 weeks off, then there were 2 weeks, if my memory serves me correctly, because I was a teacher in the district at that time, that there was actually intervention, and there was also programs for kids who needed greater challenges. So there you might have seen a difference. I have searched the web, I won't say totally thoroughly, but I have searched the web rather extensively looking for what's happening across the nation with alternative calendars, and they're all over the board. At one time, Florida had over 1,000 schools with an alternative calendar. If my information from the web is correct, they now have 19. I spoke to someone specifically in Orlando, and they said they have gone totally away from that because it just didn't work for kids. So, in listening to parents and understanding their concerns, and I know some parents have, from what they share with us, have actually moved into districts because of that alternative calendar. So it does pull at you both as a parent and as an educator on the decision to make. But the more I look at what's happening within our district with student achievement and the students who are missing for whatever reason, and the input from teachers and administrators within our district, my thoughts on what I need to do and how I need to vote has changed as far as moving on it now and not waiting.
Well, I really appreciate listening to everyone's comments. I think everyone has a valid point, no matter what you're expressing. Good communication is the hardest thing in the world. Talking about communicating with the parents, it's just a hard job to reach everybody that you want to reach. Like Dr. Andrews, I have a hard time saying goodbye to and disappointing the parents and the teachers who are so passionate about the alternative calendar. I had a child on the alternative calendar and a child on the traditional calendar. Both worked well for different reasons at different times in different ways for different children. I love that that our system was willing to be innovative, to try something new, to be cutting edge and offer this opportunity to the families and the children of Murphysboro City. So it's, it has been a struggle for me to think about this and make what I think is, a good decision. It comes down to, for me, that we have a director who is innovative. She brings tremendous energy to the position, and her core value is doing what's best for the children. And as a board member, I really want to support that direction that she has taken. And if voting for this calendar will help achieve good things for our children, that even though it's a very difficult decision, I want to make that decision. So those are some of my thoughts and feelings about it.
Ms. Topper?
I just thought of one other thing I think the board needs to be aware of. I guess, I don't know if you read all the emails carefully, but one thing I noticed in one of the emails was that the parents that were in a particular situation would have to go back to court and arrange for a different custody schedule. I don't know how long that takes. A lot of times it takes a while to get into court. I hope that we take time to think through all the ramifications of what we're doing before we do something too quickly. And so there may be things that we haven't thought of that might come up. And for that reason, I would prefer to maybe let everybody know we're going that way and then do it next year. But I can't see. I'm just concerned there's things we haven't thought of that might be like that would have an impact on families. And I again, also read all the letters and things of people that said they actually moved and bought houses and everything else because of this. And so if we give people a little more time and notice on this, it might be beneficial to them.
Mr. Campbell?
I'm not against the unified calendar, and I think it's probably something that we eventually need to do. However, and I had not talked to Ms. Topper at all, but those of you on this board know, and I said last night at our work session, or study session, that I felt like that we did not need to go too quickly because of those parents who have perhaps made plans for vacations. And Dr. Gilbert has said that we will help those students, and that's true. But now, what about those school employees that are accustomed to having 2 weeks in the spring and 2 weeks in the fall? What are we going to do for them, for those that have planned out vacations during that 2-week time? We can't just say, okay, we'll pay you anyway. I don't think. It might be nice if we could. That might solve some things. If we're going to go to a unified calendar, that's fine, but I would like to see us do it in 2011 and 12 and not 2010 and 11. Because I am concerned about families. I'm concerned about employees as well. And I, like some others, have tried to find research that says one calendar is better for the other as far as academics goes, and I haven't been able to find it. And even the people that I've talked to at the university and other places can't find it. And Dr. Gilbert has said that a long time ago. And if we're going to go to a unified calendar, I would like to see us do it in 2011-12, not 2010-11.
Dr. Andrews and Dr. Petrum.
I'd like to make a motion that we, for the next year, approve the modified calendar C for the traditional calendar and have the alternative calendar for next year, and be very aggressive about making sure that we get the children into school, and I know Ms. Harris knows how to do that, on time for this next year, and then that the following year we go to a unified calendar. That's my motion.
You've heard the motion. Is there a second?
You're saying alternative,
I'm saying continue with the alternative calendar and maybe use the modified C for the traditional calendar for next year, and then the following year go to the unified calendar.
Like the modified C, is that what you're saying?
Right. Because I think the modified C is pretty close to the traditional. I don't think that would be very disruptive to go ahead and move to that and then go to the, and then have one last year of the alternative calendar, give families time to get used to it, get adjusted to the idea, hear about the reasons, and then, and also be very aggressive about getting our children into schools, using all the media outlets we can, anything we can think of to get our children in the schools on time, and then the next year. That's my motion.
Did you get all that? Is there a second?
second.
Questions? Dr. Buttram?
I have some comments to make that I'd like to have made earlier before the motion, so this isn't in opposition necessarily to the motion, but I really feel strongly that if we're going to make a change, that the timing for our system is now. We have a new director. We have a new director that's starting new leadership programs, especially with the professional learning communities. I've seen what they can do to schools, and I think that if we feel like that it would not work on two calendars, we need to consider that strongly for this program, because I think this program is going to also help transform our instruction within our schools. Also, I went through the transition of working on in a traditional calendar to a year-round calendar, and the transitional year is not as hard as we think sometimes when we think about those families who have special circumstances like the court documents that have to be changed. Because if you think about it, someone moving from Kentucky into Tennessee and they live in one of our year-round school districts, they have to change theirs too, or it would be from anywhere. So there will be pockets of those people with special circumstances, regardless of what we do, what we change, when we change it, and I think we do a good job of addressing that. But the timing with our budget and the fact that just here alone tonight, Mr. Anderson gave us 2 ways we're almost going to be able to have access to almost $70,000. That's huge. That's 2 brand new teachers. And I see everything as employees now, kind of, when we start looking at money, because when we start to dissect this budget Thursday, we're going to see how valuable saving a little bit here and there and nickel and diming is going to be what's going to save some of these employees' jobs. So if we can save money doing this, if it's the right time for our school system, if it's the right thing for kids, it's still going to be the right thing for kids next year at this time. And I guarantee we're still going to have some families who are not going to want to change. So that's my feelings about the before the motion was made, but it will affect the way I vote.
I think we still will have some families who, either way you go, we're going to have some that are not going to be at school on time. That's not a, I'm amazed at the numbers. I'm not disputing the numbers, but I'm amazed at that. But what I hope will happen is that the people in the city of Murphysboro will pick up something to keep up with local things that are happening in news. In a recent survey that was taken, and everybody doesn't know it, but it was shown out of a classroom that 2 people admitted that they read the local paper every day. And this is in a class of young children. And if you look at other surveys and statistics, it says that. And there's nothing, well, I don't guess there's a whole lot we can do to make people read, but I would encourage the people of this city to read local newspaper, listen to local radio, and get the news, because when that child has been delinquent in school, and we are putting some strong effort on that, but when that child is delinquent and that parent is taken to court, or that child is taken to court, I've seen the juvenile judges in this county and the city work, and I guarantee you they're not going to be on the child, but they're going to be on the parent, and that's just from first-hand knowledge that I've seen it as we've had kids when I was still working in court. So parents, you need to make sure that you keep up with what's going on locally, whether it be schools or anything else, but in this situation, particularly in school.
Ms. Duggan?
Just something to keep in mind is, and I brought this up last night at the work session, but there is a piece of legislation in this legislature that is talking about moving testing to the first 2 weeks of May. And if that legislation gets passed, then it would be a mandated time that schools could not start before. You could start any time after that. But that would make our discussions a moot issue. And if that legislation does pass, even if it's the last day of the legislature, it's my understanding it goes into effect in August. So just something to keep in mind.
Ms. Wade, one comment about the motion, if I could, and I may be out of order.
No.
I'm new, and you'll have to correct me if I am.
That's all right.
If you're going to keep 2 calendars, obviously it doesn't do what I want to do as far as student learning, but that's irrelevant at this point, although it's never irrelevant. But I would ask, if you're going to keep the 2 calendars, I would prefer that you keep the traditional and the alternative, because there's no reason to shift really to the modified C. All that will do is make the parents who are interested or who would already be on traditional have to change their plans, and it will do nothing as far as staff development or helping with what we're trying to do with the children.
I can modify my motion and change that to be traditional and then go to modified C-type calendar for the following year. I'll take that if the seconding person will accept that.
I do.
Now we're back to questions about the change.
Just in a question, maybe I think, don't we run a newspaper ad every year for children to come back?
We do, Mr. Hopper, and I was thinking about the communication, and I believe when Chastity did the interview, I did talk with her about the number of children that we were missing. I think what you will find, it really, we could run all the newspaper articles we want to, but when you look at the reasons that were given, a lot of the parents are moving into the district, and they're coming in assuming that we would be on a calendar that would be similar to what other districts are on. We're seeing things like we've never had an alternative calendar. They are following the county calendar, which is not the alternative calendar. So a lot of parents don't realize that even that they're supposed to be on an alternative calendar. They're assuming that it would be the same as the county. Another one that we saw was they didn't know which school they were zoned for and where to find out the information, and so they weren't able to access the calendars. Another one didn't know the registration date or where to get the school calendar. And again, I'm just going over the reasons that April listed. So I think, and what we have seen with the preschools, and when I was here previously, to reach those children that we absolutely had to reach for preschool, we could have it in the newspaper and we could have it on the radio, but it became a door-to-door situation with having to go knock on the doors of people that we knew needed the access to the preschool. So I think that we can do whatever we can do as far as publicity, but you're going to still, I think, have a real disparity in the number of students. Simply, again, and we can't ignore. Personally, Linda Gilbert loves the alternative calendar, but I'm also a realist, and I also, when I was doing the interview, one of the things that you asked me, Mr. Hopper, is whether I can make the tough calls. And this has been a very tough call, so I certainly empathize with what you're saying, Dr. Andrews. But my reason for making that call is what we're seeing this year. This year, we have a chance of seeing another 156 students who will miss out on 3 weeks of school.
Well, my point about the newspaper was, apparently from what Mr. Campbell's talking about, the parents aren't reading the newspaper and wonder if we should be advertising on cable instead of
and I think we can certainly do that, but I think you're still going to hit those parents, and many of them are the transient parents that need those children. They need to be there every day that they possibly can be there. But certainly we will do everything we can.
The good thing is the trend appears to be going down somewhat. If we miss any, that's a disappointment. So maybe we can put out an extra effort this year, and then I'm no reflection on you, but I think the whole thing's been communicated poorly. It just got out wrong or something apparently, and I think that we got a lot of people upset and excited about it, and we needed better communication on the front end of these reasons of why it was being proposed, and less people would be excited about it, I think. And so, anyway, I understand there was some miscommunication apparently, but maybe with this period of time, I'm thinking we can get this information out to where people do know why it's important to make the change.
Dr. Andrews?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that, you had 144 children maybe who signed up late, but we also had quite a few who signed up late for the traditional calendar, and it sort of ended up being more like 60 children would have been the difference is when I was kind of looking at the numbers before, and that's still too many to be starting school later than would have. So, but I think we need to have some time to have parents understand what's going to happen and why it's going to happen, and give people some time to prepare. It's a big change. That's just my opinion, and I do see the point that everyone has made, Dr. Buttram as well.
I never underestimate the power of parents. It doesn't take a year to get a parent ready. It takes really overnight for a parent. When we discussed this last night, I charged this board to leave and come back with what we needed to do. That charge is still there. When I asked Dr. Gilbert about her vision, when she came in and applied for this position, on what it was going to take to keep us at the top of our game, children was the first thing. She came back with a pyramid and told us exactly how she wanted it worked. I knew there would be some things on the inside of that pyramid as part of her vision that would be hard for this board, and now we have come to the crux of a calendar that's tough. It's going to be tough if you face this calendar next year. Once you get comfortable and settled in a position, it's going to be, if you change it 2 years from now, it's going to be hard on this board, and it's going to be hard on parents. I tried to look at it from the children's point of view, economic point of view, the vision that she shared, and what are we looking at with the opening of 2, really 3 new schools that are proposed by our partners, the county. I looked at it as if she had taken the time to deal with the people in the trenches, the principals, office staff, teachers. I won't say it was miscommunicated. I think the principals and their staff do an excellent job with getting it out. And some folks may fall into the situation, a lot of us, we put off to the last minute. I meant to do it, I planned to do it, but I didn't get around to doing it. I, too, had problems with the calendar. Everybody knows we're having problems. But we ask, and she has asked us to support this vision, support the moving forward of Murphysboro City Schools. It's hard in her position to bring things to us, and then we're saying, well, and nothing against anybody, we're saying let's put it off and let's wait. We're saying we want to go forward. We want to rise and stay where we need to be. It's going to be tough, but then whatever calendar you pass, she has asked us to please work with her. Let's get started into professional learning, and putting off is going to set us back. The question is, do you want to go forward? Do you want to stay where we are, or do you want to go backwards? That's what we need to look at when we talk about this calendar. It's going to be hard, but we're going to work with the parents. You heard Dr. Gilbert say anybody that we've kind of put out of place, we're going to work to get them back where they need to be and not be penalized. We're going to have to get ready to vote. There's been a motion. I ask you to vote with the vision, vote with what we know is coming up this year for 5th grade and 6th grade, and economic reasons. Everybody is tightening their belts. Whenever you can see money saved, where we can do something great with money, let's try and save money. So, board, you've heard the motion. There's been a second. Ms. Ridley, if you'll read that motion, please, ma'am, and call the roll.
The amendment to the motion would read that the schools stay on the existing calendar for 2010-2011, and that the system move to a modified C unified calendar for 2011-12, and that the system aggressively use all media outlets to assure that children in the school.
That's her motion.
Well done.
Call the roll. Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Andrews?
Aye.
Dr. Buckman?
No.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Duggan?
No.
Mr. Hopper?
Yes.
Ms. Phillips?
No.
Ms. Wade?
No.
Okay.
Ms. Wade, I'd like to make a motion that we accept Dr. Gilbert's recommendation to move to a single modified C calendar for the upcoming school year, 2010-2011.
I'll second that.
There's been a motion and a second. Are there any questions? Questions? Ms. Ridley, would you please call the roll?
Dr. Buckman?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Duggan?
Yes.
Mr. Hopper?
Yes.
Ms. Phillips?
Aye.
Dr. Andrews?
Aye.
Ms. Wade?
Yes. Thank you.
Again, I'm just learning this job. I don't pretend to do everything right, and so I'm not sure how much I could comment, but I cannot tell you how much I empathize with the parents who really wanted to stay with the alternative calendar. You asked me to do a job, and I'm trying to do that. And I will be talking with the principals and asking them, please, to help parents and also to work with the children. If they have already planned vacations, we certainly do not want to penalize the children. And we will be getting out information, if not tonight, in the morning first thing, with the alert now about the calendar and finalizing that with them so that we can have as much information as we can out there. I realize the difficult decision you had to make.
Ms. Wade.
Ms. Duggan?
I would like to ask Dr. Gilbert if she would immediately speak with MEA about they're going ahead and looking at a calendar and bringing to us early. I'm not sure what it says in the contract, but that maybe we could have a proposed calendar for 2011, 2012 from them, maybe by October. Because I know, there hasn't been an approved calendar out there for anybody to act on as far as anything having been approved and be official. Although, you kind of go with what you've been used to, and that's understandable. But just so we can be a little more proactive, I think it would be very helpful if we could have a calendar on our website approved 2 years in advance, with people understanding that the state legislature changes things and then we have to fall in line. But just so we, show that we're being a little more proactive with what we're doing with our calendars.
Ms. Campbell.
And everybody needs to understand that even what we've done tonight so far may be changed. I mean, the legislature may change that. I know you will, but I just don't want us to forget our employees.
Right.
Okay?
Right. No.
Thank you.
And if I could say with MEA, I certainly appreciate the relationship that we have with the teachers. I appreciate the relationship we have with the principals, and we certainly will be communicating with them. If there's one thing that we are trying to be about in this district, it is open communication. And so I understand that it is MEA's responsibility to submit calendars to you as a board, and I will certainly ask them to take a look at that earlier.
The other comment I wanted to make was just to reiterate, let's see if maybe we can get together with the county about having a truly unified calendar. If we're not going to have the alternative calendar anymore, one of the benefits should be that families have one calendar. They don't have to worry about child care for this person or that person certain days. And we also know that we're more likely to have good attendance when our calendars match. So if we can ask the MEA calendar committee or whoever, would work on that, if they could work toward that. And it may not work out at all. That's all right, but we just need to make the effort, I think.
Absolutely.
Ms. Harper.
I guess we've lost any hope of aligning with MTSU and Rutherford County, too. We used to try to do that, so I think that's gone.
Yeah. What has happened with TVR is all the TVR schools were required to go to one calendar. And so when they did that, it really took it out of MTSU's hands to do that. So TVR really sets that calendar for MTSU and sets that way ahead of time. But I think that we certainly can look at aligning with the county. I think if you look at the modified C calendar, a lot of the days are going to align with the county. We did that with a purpose. Our purpose, really, with professional learning communities is to not only communicate within our own school district and have teachers collaborating and administrators collaborating, but to have us collaborating with other districts. I think we would be richer as a district. And so there are several districts in the state who are moving toward professional learning communities, and we're actually discussing how we can use technology. In fact, have a meeting, I think, next week about that to see how our teachers can access more information and learn more from each other and spread that across. But I think if you look at modified C, there are some differences, obviously, with the winter break now at 3 weeks, which is seen sort of as a modified traditional in a way. One of the things that we definitely heard from the teachers was that they really like the 3 weeks. When you look at as far as the county and modified C, we have the in-service at the beginning is very similar, where we have a half day for students on August 6th. They have a teacher work day. They have their first day, which is actually a partial day on August the 4th, where we'll be in service. And then our last days do align, and then the rest of the calendar, with the exception of the winter break, our calendars do align. So we're pretty close, but I think in the future, I certainly hear Dr. Andrews, and we are about collaboration, and we will be talking with them. But we can't control MTSU, Mr. Hopper, I'm sorry. I haven't learned how to do that with the Board of Regents yet.
All righty. Certainly, I'd like to thank you, Dr. Gilbert, and I know that I'd like to thank all the principals and teachers that I know once everybody finds out about the calendars. I know we'll work together for the good. I have the faith that I know we will. Thank you. Well, we're down to reports and information. Ms. Baker, would you like to, number A?
Yes, at the last board meeting, it had been requested that this policy be put on the next agenda for discussion. It is Board Policy 13. It deals with board staff communications. Basically, as we've discussed numerous times, the basic line of communication between the board and the staff is through the director. Any communication from staff to the board should as well go through the director. And any board communication, any of the communication from the board to the staff should, this policy states, should go through the director as well to the staff. And then visits to the school, the policy encourages board members to visit the schools. It says that such visits shall be regarded as informal expressions of interest in the school affairs and not as inspections or visits for supervisory or administrative purposes. Official visits by board members will be carried on only under board authorization and with the full knowledge of the staff, including the director and the principal and other supervisors. And the policy finally does deal with social interaction and states that the staff and board members do share a keen interest in the schools and in education generally, and it is to be expected that they will meet at social affairs and other functions, that they will discuss educational trends, issues, innovations, and general school problems in that informal social interaction. However, staff members are reminded that individual board members have no special authority except when they are convened as a legal meeting of the board invested with special authority by board action.
Thank you, Ms. Baker. Board members, any questions?
I was the one that asked that we revisit and review this policy. I think it's always good and important for board members to review policies and procedures for dealing and visiting and one thing and another. And I have been particularly interested in the section of the policy that deals with visits to schools. And I had a discussion with Ms. Baker regarding board members' visits to schools, particularly to faculty meetings. And so on her suggestion, I contacted TSBA to get their opinion about it. I talked with Dr. Tammy Grissom, and she directed me to their policy director, a gentleman named Joel Mosley. After asking his opinion about board members' visits to faculty meetings, because I want to say this, on one side, that could seem like a really good thing to do, because it would seem like, well, stop by, say hello, just express our appreciation to the staff, and that can seem like a really positive thing. But we just agreed to our MEA contract and realized that this year, I really realized for the first time how important those faculty meetings are to the staff, and that is not an open meeting, that is a business meeting, and they have legitimate concerns about frequency of meetings and times of meetings, and so that drew my attention to this particular aspect. After my discussion with Mr. Mosley, I asked him if he would put his response in writing to me, because if you're anything like me, you would like to read it, be able to read it for yourself, what he actually had to say for yourself. And so I have made copies of his email, and I'd like to share it with each of you. If you would pass that down.
You got one for Mr. Washington?
Yeah.
Do you have that many copies?
Yeah, I do. I have already forwarded a copy to Ms. Baker and to Dr. Gilbert. And just because our public at home does not have this, I beg your indulgence as I read the pertinent parts aloud. It says, you have requested an opinion regarding the authority of individual board members to attend meetings between administrators and teachers that are normally closed to the public. Absent specific authorization by the board as a whole, no such authority exists. Individual board members have no authority except when they act as part of the board of the board as a corporate entity. While they do not give up their rights as citizens by accepting the position, they do not gain individually other rights and privileges. Tennessee Code Annotated 49-2-203A5 places the duty of school visits on the local board when the board deems such visits are necessary. Individual board members cannot exercise that authority on their own. I want to be very clear that this does not mean that board members are forbidden by law to visit schools. However, if they do so without the authority of the board, then they must be very careful to follow all the policies and procedures that any other member of the public must follow. It is for this reason that I must say, unless the board as a whole authorized the attendance, individual board members should not attend closed meetings, however informally. And so I thought that it would be good, so for you to have this in writing and be able to look at it and think about it and comment on it. Or
Comment?
Mr. Campbell.
I'm sorry.
No, Mr. Campbell.
By closed meetings, what are we talking about?
faculty meetings.
How can, and I'm just asking the question, I'm not arguing the point.
Okay.
How can a faculty meeting be closed if we're operating under the open meetings law?
They aren't. They are, faculty meetings are not under the open meetings law.
Okay.
The open meetings law only deals with those meetings held by bodies that make decisions for a governmental entity, and that's bodies such as yourself, a school board, a council, any body, if there's a Parks and Rec Commission, any sort of body that takes votes and makes decisions for the governmental entity. Faculty meetings are considered business meetings, administrative meetings, not legislative decision-making meetings.
I wish I'd known that 35 years ago, and I wouldn't have been the bear to some of these people wanting to attend the faculty meeting.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's how the law is. So they are closed meetings, that
Okay.
it's the principal's prerogative to decide the agenda of that meeting and who can and should attend that meeting so they can expedite the business that needs to be dealt with at a faculty meeting.
Now, would you please, looking at our policy on the visit to schools that Ms. Phillips had brought up, would you kind of give me, on the last sentence on the visit to schools, where it says be carried on only under board authorization and with the knowledge of staff, including director of schools, principals, if these are official visits?
You want me to explain an official visit? That would be a visit where the board as a whole, as a body, has made a motion that we want Mr. Campbell to go out to the faculty meetings to relay information to the faculty. We're taking a vote that we want to designate Mr. Campbell to go into the schools to observe different classrooms and report back information to us. But that official visit has to be done not secretively, not surprise visits. It has to be done with the knowledge of the director and the knowledge of the principal and the knowledge of the staff. It has to be an announced visit. That's what y'all said in your policy with the language, with full knowledge of staff, including director, principal.
Okay, so that is an official visit.
Yes.
So what constitutes an unofficial visit?
And y'all
For me as a board member.
y'all have categorized them as official visits and informal visits. The informal, non-official visit would be if you want to stop by the school to have a conversation with the principal, or to just eat lunch at the cafeteria so you can make your passion for the school known, or make your desire to be involved in the school known. That would be the informal visit. And there again, y'all said that visit you would communicate that was going on with the director. I know there's been situations where y'all would attend, say that one of the grades would be having a performance, and you would want to show your support for the school and attend that play or band concert or basketball game. That's one of those informal visits.
So are you saying that even the informal visits we have to notify Dr. Gilbert or not?
Well, they're not inspections, as long as they're not something being done as an inspection or to gather information that you're trying to report back on. Those are those informal social visits that are allowed under your policy.
Okay. So if I wanted to visit a school just to walk in and say hello, or if I wanted to visit Robin and talk to Robin, then that's fine. There's not a problem, as long as I'm not doing something supposedly official by the board.
Right. And one thing you have to remember is when you are acting outside of direction of the board, you are merely Joe Citizen.
I got you.
And you have to follow all of the policies that are in place for signing in, checking in, not interrupting instructional time. All of those same procedures and policies have to be followed.
Okay.
Mr. Hopper?
If we redo this, I would hope we would revise the way this reads. I think the intent is that board members would not go to staff meetings and impose on the staff meeting and usurp the principal's authority and position in that meeting. And I think the way this is written, it is not real clear that we're talking about social visits as opposed to attending management meetings. Also, if we do this with the staff meetings at the schools, I think it also should include the staff meetings with the director at the central office, because in some years past, that's been a little problem. And
The board member attended staff meeting?
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure this didn't come about as a result of that, and I think this was possibly an attempt to deal with that, and we just didn't carry it out far enough to be specific about what we were talking about. So I think we all know the difference in going out and having lunch in the cafeteria with Robin and sitting there with some teachers talking, that type thing, as opposed to interfering with staff meetings when she or other principals are trying to conduct business. And I would suggest we have the same thing apply to the central office meetings that applies to the school meetings.
Dr. Andrews?
I'd just like to comment, I know in years past I did read that section of law, and this policy has to be in line with state law. And state law, as I recall, is specific about what board members are allowed to do and not allowed to do. Am I remembering right, Ms. Baker?
Right. There's an entire code section that sets out the duties and powers of board members.
Right. And it's very specific and says that we do not have any authority as individuals. The other comment I'd like to make is it's really difficult when you are a board member, a principal or a teacher, they're going to respond to us like we are a board member, even though we don't have the authority at the time. I think that it really puts an imposition on a principal for us to ask them to come to a faculty meeting. They may know they don't have to say yes, but how are you going to tell a board member, no, you can't come? It just puts them in an awkward position, and I don't think we should do that.
I would like to make a motion we amend the policy for better clarity. I have a possible, of course, I'm sure somebody else may have better verbiage, but just off the top of my head, board members should not attend faculty meetings or meetings with central office staff. Is that how you would put that, Mr. Hopper? Is that-
Unless approved by the entire board,
Unless approved by the board as a whole, or the entire board as a whole.
as an official visit or something like that, whatever.
That just adds the clarity, and I think he was very clear in this email, so, and I appreciated his time and Dr. Grissom's time.
Well, we have some new board members coming on soon that might help them in understanding what their responsibilities are and what they should and shouldn't do.
And there's always kind of a learning curve for all of us whenever we come on the board, finding out, what we can do and what responsibilities we have, what powers we have, that kind of thing.
And some things that look good and reasonable, like a visit like that might, it can seem very, very positive. On the other hand, it can be inappropriate.
Is there a second to the motion?
Would you care to see if Ms. Baker could
Come up with
write
better
the
verbiage.
policy
Reword.
next meeting or something?
That's fine with me. Yes,
Ms. Baker, we're still going to need a second to that motion.
Yes, if you could, please.
do I,
Is there a second to the motion? And then you need to go back after that, the questions and changing, but we need a second.
She was saying that she doesn't want to change the verbiage. She would like to
Oh.
ask, am I understanding right? That you would rather have her bring the gist of it to us and then let us vote on it?
can I amend the motion?
Just withdraw it and make another one.
Okay, I withdraw that motion and make another one. Okay, but first, let me understand the procedure correct, Ms. Baker. If you bring it to us next month, will it be voted on next month?
It's at the board's discretion. The board's told me at other times that they'd like to review a policy for a month and then vote on it at the following meeting, but we've had situations where y'all have immediately adopted a policy that I've brought to you, so it's really at the board's discretion. There's no set procedure that y'all have adopted in policy on how you want to approach policy adoption.
Well, go ahead.
Is there an urgency, Ms. Phillips, to get this done, or are you seeing that as a problem today, or is it urgent?
I see it as an issue, but I think that it's also, we're going to have at least one new board member, and I think that it will, as Mr. Hopper said, it will make their job easier to already have it clearly stated, very clarified in the policy, because these policies can be they're new. I mean, to new people, they can be very difficult to comprehend, the ramifications, the limitations. I think they can be. And I think clarity will help. So, for me, I would like to go ahead and get it taken care of.
I believe she'd like to state her motion again. Would you like to state your motion?
Yes, I would. But I'm not sure that I would, if all we need is a sentence to make it clearer for everyone, I'm not sure that the best route to go would be to burden Ms. Baker with another project.
If you have a sentence you would like added, you can make a motion to add that sentence and take a vote on it now.
I'd like to hear other people's opinions. I asked the feedback from board members.
I have a suggestion. You can say yea or nay. It says official visits, which would include staff meetings and other business meetings in the school system by board members, will be carried out only under board authorization and with full knowledge of staff, including director of schools, principal, and other supervisors.
That seems to do the trick.
Could you repeat that?
Official visits by board members, which would include, or official visits which would include staff meetings and any other business meetings of the school system, by board members will be carried out only under board authorization and with the full knowledge of staff, including the director of schools, principal, and other supervisors.
I was just wondering, that says you started with official visits.
Official visits, that's the way it's written there. So I'm just sort of further defining what an official visit would include.
Okay.
Which would include, but it does not preclude other kinds of official visits, too.
Right.
Like inspection visits and visits that would interrupt classroom teaching or whatever.
Is that change, is that a motion to make that change?
I think that's a good clarification. How about you, Mr. Hopper?
Would that include central office management meetings?
It says staff meetings and business meetings. It doesn't say in the schools or anywhere. It's just in the whole system.
Is that a second, Mr. Hopper?
That's a second.
Questions?
Comment. We're talking about, and I want to make sure I understand this right, we're talking about official visits. We're not talking about just, as David and I have talked about, going by and visiting with Robin or anybody else, Regina Payne or anybody else. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about official visits as per authorized by the board for a particular reason, right?
Right, and that would include if you can't have an official visit if you're going out to do an inspection.
I agree.
Or anything of that nature. You can't take it upon yourself to go
Now,
do that.
if a board member is invited by the building level principal or by the director of schools to attend whether it be a staff meeting or advisory board meeting or anything along that way, that's fine.
Yes,
right?
that's their prerogative who to invite and put on their agendas at their meetings.
There would still probably need to be some kind of board of approval, like the chairman or somebody, I would think.
And would it hold true that if a principal invited one board member, that they would be obligated to invite all the board members?
It's been my recommendation that if you open up a situation to one board member, you would invite others as well. Of course, that puts us in a open meeting situation, so you may want to have a series of meetings, because once two board members are at any meeting, it does become an open meeting situation.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
My understanding of what Mr. Mosley has sent us, Ms. Baker, is that at no time should the board attend a faculty meeting unless that person has the, let's see, how did he place it?
The board as a whole authorized.
That's right, the board as a whole authorized that visit. Is that correct?
If there's nothing in the law that will prohibit the director or a principal from inviting an individual board member to a particular meeting, but that board member is not there to act as a board member. They don't have the sanction and power of the board behind them to make decisions, to speak for the entire board. They may be able to gather information that they're going to bring back and share. They can sit and listen, but they're at that meeting not as someone official from the board. Okay? I don't know how to clarify that anymore.
But it's a business meeting, that's correct?
Right. A faculty meeting is considered a business meeting.
A closed business meeting?
Yes.
Did you want that read again? He seconded. Did you want it read for clarification?
I just think it's good to go ahead and read it again before there's a vote.
Yes, ma'am.
The motion is official visits by board members, which would include staff meetings and other business meetings in the school system by board members, would be carried out only with board authorization and knowledge of the director, principals, and other supervisors.
The only problem I see with that is that it should not be all-inclusive, it shouldn't mean that other kinds of official visits would be okay. So I don't think that wording quite works. I don't know if Ms. Baker has a thought.
What, could you read it again?
Official visits by board members, which would include staff meetings and other business meetings in the school system by board members, would be carried out only with board authorization and knowledge of the director, principals, and other supervisors.
I thought that the clause that started with which would include staff meetings was intended to go after the words by board members.
That's fine.
Official visits by board members, which would include staff meetings and any other business meetings of the school system, will be carried on only under board authorization and with full knowledge, et cetera, the rest of it.
Do you think that carries out the intent that would, I'm sorry, yes.
No, that's fine.
Do you think that,
I think there are other types of, you could say which would include but not be limited to. That may be what you need to add, since there may be other types of official visits that are beyond a staff meeting or a business meeting.
Okay.
That would be good. Can you add that, Linda? But not limited to.
This way.
Mr. Campbell?
May I make a suggestion? May I make a suggestion that Ms. Baker come back with wording for this at our next board meeting so that we can have it clear and we'll get it in our package before then? I'm so confused now on this word, that word, and all the other words. I'm not too sure what we're voting on.
There's a motion on the floor and a second, and we're into questions. What you're asking is another motion. I'm gathering that Mrs. Baker, along with the motion maker, is straightening out how the verbiage should go. Now, if she wants to retract, he take back his second and pose another motion, that's up to them. But right now, there is a motion on the floor with corrections being made to the language that they want to use. Even if you vote on this motion and when we get into the policy, we're going to have those meetings in May, you can go back and change the wording at that time, because we're going to visit the policies again. You may want to start with BO13 in that section, but if you vote on that sentence and it goes through, then you can always go back and change the language. So, if you don't,
have that where you...
please read it.
Do you want me to read it, Linda?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. If you look in BO13, I'm looking at the last sentence in the section that reads visits to schools. The new sentence would read, official visits by board members, which would include but not be limited to staff meetings and any other business meetings of the school system, will be carried on only under board authorization and with the full knowledge of staff, including the director of schools, principal, and other supervisors.
What about, but not limited to? You were going to put that.
I had that, which
did
would
you? I
include
missed
but not
that.
limited
I missed
to
it. I'm
staff
sorry.
meetings.
sounds good. I'm happy with that.
I think we're done with the questions unless someone has a question. Ms. Ridley, would you please call the roll? Thank you.
Campbell,
Aye.
Ms. Duggan,
Yes.
Mr. Hawes,
Yes.
Ms. Phillips,
Aye.
Dr. Andrews,
Aye.
Dr. Buckman,
Yes.
Ms. Wade,
Yes. Thank you. Dr. Gilbert?
Ready for the personnel update?
Yes,
Mr.
ma'am.
Wilkerson.
If you'll please look behind tab number 5, I'm pleased to report the licensed employees recommended for advancement to a professional license. These employees have served 25 months a minimum of 25 months in a licensed position and have met the criteria to be recommended for advancement. And that list is there for your information. Please notice that we do have a revised list. I mistakenly left off a name and added a teacher from Mitchell Nelson Elementary that made advancement. You can see it's the colored copy is the revised one, yes. Also, licensed personnel retirements and resignations. We have had one retirement and 2 resignations since the last board meeting. One decided she wanted to stay at home and raise her child, and another took a job in another district. So we want to wish them well and appreciate the service they've given us here in Murphysboro City.
Is there any questions for Mr. Wilkerson? Thank you.
And Mr. Anderson.
Behind tab 6 is your monthly revenue report and expenditure report. This month or the next month is typically when we start crossing over the line and start to be able to put back our fund balance. We're not using it. And if you can see, our net income for the month is, and it's not just for the month, it's from the beginning of the fiscal year, which starts in July, is we're now in the positive at $25,000. Last year, at the same time, we were negative $166,641. So it's $192,000 position improvement for us on our cash flow. So that's a good position. We are at the 66.7%, or two-thirds of our year. And if you go over to the revenue side, typically revenues lag a little bit behind as they come in, and we are short on local option sales tax collections of $270,000 short. Property taxes are coming in just about as we had predicted, only about $2,000 off. But overall, our revenue collection is at 64.7, whereas last year at this time we were at 63.7, so we're 1% better percentage-wise based on what our budget anticipation is. The expenditure piece is also doing well. We're at 63.2% revenue when we could be spending at the 66.7% level and still be okay. Last year at this time we were at 64.1. So we have done well on controlling our expenses to date, which makes me a very happy person, which makes you, I'm sure, a very happy person to know that we're doing okay in those areas. We are still concerned about sales tax collections, but we're doing as best we can on that. Have there any questions on the finance?
Are there any questions for Mr. Anderson before we go further?
Okay, the next item is behind tab 7 is our attendance and enrollment numbers. We dropped 10 students, 10 regular ed students this time. That still makes us up for the year at 75 students over our budgeted amount, which means we're in a good position on that. Our attendance percentage is at 95.7. That is exactly the same percentage we had last year at this time, and we're 0.1% up. We're still doing very well on attendance, so we're pleased with that. Our PTR ratios are also very strong. We have a 19.16 K through 3 average, and we have a 20.3 on 4 through 6, which means our overall average is 19.6. So last month we had talked about the growth and anticipation of some growth monies, and Ms. Phillips had asked about the 2%, so I went and did some checking on that, and there is a law that says about 2%, even though in the last few years they have given us money if we were below 2% because they were fully funding the BEP and growth. Our growth came after the cutoff date for the first half. When I talked with the state today, they do anticipate that we still might receive some growth money because our growth came after the first initial payout in January. If you look at our last month, we grew like 35 students, I think it was. So we are hoping that we will retain and maintain that number and be able to see some growth money in June. But we missed the first half window because our growth came later in the year. But I did check on that, Ms. Phillips, because it was haunting me as to the 2% rule. So I did call the state to verify all that.
Good. Thank you.
Is there any other business that's not on the agenda that you'd like to have added for the next meeting? Ms. Phillips?
I just had a comment. I wish to personally express my appreciation to Ms. Kaminsky for the expertise, hard work, time, and energy that she brought to a very difficult position, and wish her all the very best in her future opportunities.
Ditto. She did a great job giving us support and helping us meet our goals for No Child Left Behind for last year, and she's put her heart into this. We've been fortunate to have her.
Seeing as how there's nothing else, and I see no more comments, the meeting is adjourned.